Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Tori Taylor, and I proudly serve as the Executive Director of Swing Left. We are a community of over 1 million grassroots members across the country who all join together for a common mission of working year-round to elect Democrats in the most competitive elections, and we are so happy you are here tonight. We're so excited. This is the first national strategy update of 2021. I think the last time we gathered this whole community together, we were in the midst of the 2020 election, defeating Donald Trump, working our tails off for a Democratic Senate, and fighting in competitive elections across the country to elect leaders who are going to make our country a more inclusive, equitable, and just place. And I know many of you are probably coming to this call after watching this week's impeachment hearing and everything that's going on in Washington. I'm actually joining you from Washington, D.C., so all this is happening just a few blocks away from my house. And, you know, for me, and I'm sure many of you, it has really underscored how critical the work that we did this past election, how important that was. Donald Trump and Trumpism presented an existential threat to our democracy. It still does. And we could not be prouder of our Democratic House majority and the impeachment managers who have been working tirelessly to hold Donald Trump accountable for his actions. We can never let what happened on January 6th happen again. We know how fragile our democracy is now more than ever. Our institutions and our democratic pillars have been tested, and a lot of this has made me reflect on one of my favorite quotes in doing this work, and it's actually from the late Congressman John Lewis, who said that democracy is not a state, it is an act, and each generation must do its part. So I'm so grateful to be standing alongside all of you tonight, even if virtually, and over the last few years in doing our part to ensure that our democracy remains strong and vibrant, and we're continuously improve it to make sure it's a democracy that also includes everyone. So with that said, let's get started with our call tonight. First, please drop a hello in the Zoom chat. Tell us where you're joining from. One of these days, we are going to be over this pandemic and able to gather together in person. But until then, let's build as much community and connection as we can in this Zoom chat tonight. Also, if you have questions, we'll be going over a lot of content tonight on this call. So if questions come up, please go ahead and drop them in the chat as well. We will really work to tackle as many as we can at the end of this call. Also a note, there is live closed captioning available for folks if they want it or if they need it. You can start the live captioning by clicking the CC live captioning button at the bottom of your screen. I also want to recognize a few members of our incredible Swing Left staff who are on the call tonight. We've got Matt, Nia, Charlie, and Erica who are going to be jumping in the chat, dropping information as we go along. So please say hi to them as they jump in the chat and kind of help us along. So let's go over our agenda for tonight and everything that we're going to be covering. First, we're going to kick off with some celebrations of all the incredible work that so many of you took part in over the last few years. We're going to hear some reflections from our founder, Swing Left, Ethan, over the last few years. And then we're going to move into a strategy update from our incredible head of political strategy, Nisha Blandon, on what to expect in 2021 and 2022. And then we're going to close out with how you can stay involved over the next few months. We've got a really special guest, the state party chair of Wisconsin, Ben Wickler, with us, and then we will get into some Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand over the mic to Swing Left's fearless founder and president, Ethan Tadros Whitehill.
Thanks, Tori. Hey, folks. For those of you who don't know me, as Tori mentioned, I'm Ethan, the president and co-founder of Swing Left. I have to say, it's pretty heady for me to be here with all of you today after the last 4 years. You know, I actually went back and found the audio of our original kickoff call for Swing Left, kicked off not just that cycle, but the organization itself, which was almost exactly 4 years ago today. And, you know, I don't mean to get all nostalgic on you, but listening to that call, I so distinctly remember the fear and anger that I felt living under that newly minted Republican trifecta and clearly dangerous president. But even more distinctly from that call, I remember the hope that some 200,000 people had jumped on this idea of getting to work immediately on an election that was then like 2 years out, that 16,000 people dialed into here in the beginnings of our inchoate plan to take back the House in 2018, which at that point, felt little more than a dream. Well, folks, today we are living in a very different world when that dream has become a reality and then some. Today, instead of living under a newly minted Republican trifecta, we are living under a newly minted Democratic one. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are president and vice president. Democrats control not just the House, but the Senate as well. We finally have the opportunity to move forward as a country, repair the damage wrought by 4 years of Trump, and go beyond to address some of the glaring problems and inequities in our country that predated Trump and have only gotten worse since. But before we talk about looking forward, let's take a moment to reflect on how far we've come and just be proud of all we've accomplished together. Following that initial kickoff call that I mentioned, I'm proud to say we all made good on our promises and turned anger and fear into action. We started work on building an organization and tools that could support this mission that we had put out there of helping anyone have a maximum impact in the races that determine the balance of power in our country. And you all got to work organizing and fundraising for your closest swing district. This is when the focus was on the House, even before we knew who those nominees were going to be. And after 2 years of sustained action, door knocking, phone banking, house parties, fundraisers, we saw huge victories in the 2018 elections, propelled by record turnout. And the House flipped to put a check on Trump. We helped usher in inspiring new leaders like Katie Porter, Andy Kim, and Lucy McBath. It was quite a moment. Only it wasn't a moment. It was the beginning of a sea change in how the grassroots organized around elections. And then, of course, came the totally unprecedented 2020 election cycle. We organized through the pandemic and faced a tough map to retaking the Senate and beating Trump. We invested in some new tactics like letter writing that paid big dividends. And of course, we did come up short in some places, not doing as well down ballot as we had hoped. But the really cool thing is we were able to have a tremendous impact on the two most important elections of our lifetimes. Honestly, I still have a hard time processing some of these numbers. If we could skip over to the impact slide. Since Swing Left's founding in 2017, you folks made some 11.7 million phone calls, raised nearly $40 million for candidates, sent almost 23 million handwritten letters with our affiliate organization Vote Forward to turn out voters in key states, and of course knocked on an amazing 5 million doors in 2018. And of course, in 2020, we won big by close margins that showed the importance of our work, of every call, letter, and dollar in that outcome. And now the Biden administration and Democratic Congress can focus on fighting COVID, expanding healthcare, pushing for equality and racial justice, for voting rights, and strengthening our democracy. Thinking about it, in 2017, I think we all here that are sort of realized, a lot of people like myself realized that progress doesn't just happen on its own. We have to stand up and make it happen. Well, in the last 4 years, you all did just that. And you should be damn proud of what you accomplished. This is your work, your victory, and finally we can say your government as well. Where are we today? With congressional maps unknown until late 21, we have this window, this once-in-a-decade window to reflect and learn and plan as we await the 2020 census results and the completed redistricting process. To think about it this way, in 2017, we were able to get started on winning back the House because while we didn't know the nominees that we'd be supporting, we did know the districts where the battles would be won or lost. But now with redistricting going on, we don't even know those districts. So, if you I apologize, I like to think in war metaphors, but it's kind of like we're two armies on either side of a mountain range, getting ready for the next battle, only winter sets in, forcing both sides to wait for spring. And so I think the key for us, and we're going to be talking about a lot in this call, is to take full advantage of this pause of hostilities, as it were. Basically, as we're seeing it, the coming year is the perfect time for the swing left community to power up for the electoral work ahead. We've got to train, we've got to test new tactics, we've got to educate ourselves and our fellow activists, And to talk more about that political scenario and what we need to be doing in it, I want to turn it over to our head of political strategy, the amazing Nisha Blandon, to give a preview of our 21-22 strategy and what that powering up, as we're calling it, is going to look like. Take it away, Nisha.
Awesome. Thank you, Ethan. I mean, who better to walk us through what has gotten us to this moment than Ethan? He has been here for it all, and we are thankful for his leadership. We are also thankful to all of you, our volunteers, our partners, and our friends. It is in large part due to your work and support we have accomplished so much that we just talked about, but there's still much more to do and the work is not done. And I am excited to walk you through what is on the horizon. As Ethan mentioned, congressional maps are unknown, but we have an opportunity to reflect, learn, and plan as we wait for the redistricting process. The first part of this year is the perfect time for our swing left community to power up for the electoral work ahead. Our team will be monitoring the redistricting process and providing key political insights and updates along the way. We'll give our swing left community a behind the scenes look at how political targeting strategy comes together, what data we're monitoring, and how we know our strategy is most effective. The midterms will present a challenge and an opportunity as well for us here at Swing Left. Historically, the party in power in DC has paid a political price in the midterms because their voters get complacent and turnout decreases. But that's where Swing Left comes in. We were built as a way to turn out Democratic voters in midterm elections. And by continuing to organize early and support candidates in the most strategic races across the country, we have the opportunity to reverse that trend in 2022. So because of all of that, our top priority over the next 2 years is to hold the House and Senate. This is the focus that will guide our targeting, which is securing, defending, and expanding Democratic majorities. Part of the challenge and opportunity we face takes us right back to redistricting. Not only are Democrats facing a midterm cycle, but we have to wait until we know, how congressional districts will be drawn. And redistricting normally is a lengthy process, but it's even more delayed this year because of the census. And because we don't know the districts yet, no one can organize around those races until we know more. But that also presents an opportunity. We have the chance to beat Republicans to the punch and begin organizing before we even get those new districts. And we'll do that through supporting the work of state Democratic caucuses, the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, and the National Democratic Redistricting Committee in their fight for fair redistricting. We'll also start fundraising for competitive races in order to assure early electoral building money. Lastly, new districts mean a new dynamic. Incumbents aren't as assured of an advantage as they would be in a normal election year. This means that each volunteer action, every dollar raised for our candidates will have an even more significant impact on the final result in these critical elections. So what does our calendar look like? Here's what you can expect and when you can expect it over the coming cycle. This year, in 2021, we are focused on powering up. Our Swing Left community is all about action, and in the electoral space, it might feel like impactful actions to take are in short supply right now. But this is also a chance for us to power up as organizers by building our community and groups, honing our skills, and really laying the infrastructure for the coming cycle. We recently launched the Defend Democracy Fund, which is our fund to hold Republicans accountable for their attacks on our democracy by raising money for the Democratic nominees who will challenge the most vulnerable seditionist House Republicans in 2022. This year, we'll also support Democratic nominees in Virginia. Virginia is a bellwether state for the upcoming midterms and will be seen as an electoral approval poll for the Biden administration. We will be supporting the eventual Democratic nominee for governor, as well as Democratic nominees in yet to be determined targeted House of Delegate districts. We begin sharing our targets in Virginia this spring, and we'll know our candidates after the June 8th primary. In 2022, next year, our top priority is to protect our House and Senate majorities. With razor-thin majorities and Trumpism still the defining ideology of the GOP, our 2018 and 2020 gains are far from secure. So with that said, it's going to take time for us to announce our full slate of candidates. the landscape can shift dramatically in 2 years. We are also analyzing 2022 state election opportunities to help sustain Democratic gains. In addition to holding our congressional majorities, we are continuing to analyze opportunities to protect and expand voter access in key states across the country. As 2020 showed us, electing the right state officials will be critical to preserving the integrity of our elections in future cycles. So, with slim majorities in Congress and a midterm election in front of us, Democrats need us, and as always, Swing Left is here to help you find the most impactful ways to take action. So keep an eye out for the first slate of targets, which we will release in the spring, and follow along as we trace the redistricting process and fight to maintain control of Congress. And now I'll turn it back to our awesome Executive Director, Tori.
Thank you, Nisha, and thank you, Ethan. I feel so fired up reflecting on all the work that and the accomplishments that we've been able to do together. And Nisha, that was a great outline and summary of what's ahead, what to expect. And as we all know, the Biden administration and Democrats across the country are going to need more than just 2 years to really implement the bold progressive policy visions and the collective goals that we all hold so dear in this new Democratic trifecta. And so as we prepare to protect those fragile majorities in Congress, we really want to use this time, this off year, as some people call it, to really prepare and power up for the fights ahead. And so what does that powering up look like? This is another new beginning for Swing Left and, the work ahead to prepare for that defense work in 2022 and 2024. We did a lot of early organizing and sustaining and strategic work and organizing work in 2017. And now we're at another unique opportunity to not only use this moment as a period of reflection and planning around what is the most strategic uses of our resources, but also to build a strategy as well as new tools and programs for the fights ahead. And so we have a couple ways that you can get involved today. One, we have a page on our website, swingleft.org/checklist for ways to plug in, but just to call out a few of them now. One, join a local group. This is a perfect time if you're not already part of one of our Swing Left groups to get engaged. We have over 500 Swing Left groups across the country, and they really are the backbone of our local organizing work. Two, donate to the Defend Democracy Fund. As Nisha stated, grassroots fundraising is so important early on. And like Nisha said, we've zeroed in on some House Republicans who helped incite the treasonous acts at the Capitol, and we are focused on raising money for their eventual Democratic opponents in competitive elections. And then next, sign up for news and updates from Swing Left. We're going to be announcing so many new exciting programs and our electoral targets in the coming months, and we want you all to be the first to know about them. So make sure you sign up and discover more ways to get involved at swingleft.org, whether you're interested in fundraising or volunteering or training, or you're a college student that's interested in participating in our college program. Our website is full of resources, and we want to make sure to communicate those updates with you directly as they happen. We'll definitely be keeping this community really informed about the ways folks can get involved, to take action, to power up. But we also want to take some time to encourage folks to rest and recharge. We can't sustain this movement if we don't sustain ourselves. All of you put in so much incredible work in last year's election, and you are our movement's best resource. So don't be afraid to rest, reflect, take a break, and then we're going to get back in this fight and really make sure we sustain these Democratic majorities in Congress. So the next part of our program is one I'm really excited about. We are going to hear from a few of our volunteers who were part of this huge impact in 2018 and 2020 and how they are continuing their organizing this year. We've got incredible volunteers, Sahad, Madeline, Donna, who are going to share some reflections from their work the last year and how they're feeling about the work ahead. So y'all can go ahead and turn on your video, and I've got a couple questions I'm going to pose to our volunteer group, and we're going to hear directly from them. Awesome. Okay, I see all of you. It's so good to see your faces. One, let's just kick it off with some introductions. Madeline, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Madeline Dyson. I'm from Marietta, Georgia, and I'm a student at George Washington University in DC. And I started organizing with Swing Left in fall 2018 because I was really inspired to make a difference. I organized the walkout at my high school that spring after the Parkland shooting happened, and over 250 students walked out, and we filled up the voicemails of our representatives, who were all Republicans at the time. And of course, none of them even returned all calls, much less passed gun violence prevention legislation. And I wasn't even old enough to vote at the time, so I was like, I got to make a difference somehow. So I found the Swing Left College Fellowship and fell in love with organizing then, and have been doing it ever since.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Sahan, you're the next one on my screen, so we'll kick it over to you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is San Rizzo Hussein. I am based and living in Chicago, originally from California. And I got involved with Swing Left back in, I want to say it was around the very, very beginning of 2018, maybe end of 2017. I was looking for a way to just do something beyond just Blue Chicago. I kept getting these emails being like, call your senators, call your congresspeople. I'm like, I am, and they're already on the fight. So like, my congressperson at the time was Quigley, and I'm like, I don't need to tell him to fight against Donald Trump. So it was a really great experience for me to get involved and be able to do things and put energy into defeating it. A lot of the kind of main things that Trump was pushing for directly affect me as an individual. So I felt it was not just me, but responsibility to community in general to do it. And it was a great channel for energy. And I've been here since, and it's such a good feeling to know that 2020 is behind us and it went the way it did.
Amazing. Also, I appreciate your Swing Left branded shirt. You came prepared and well branded for this call. I love it. And last but not least, Donna, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Donna Jaffe, and together with Bonner Udell, I co-chair the Swing Left San Gabriel Valley chapter, which is located in Southern California. I've been organizing on and off most of my life, starting in 1968, when I was a teenager and I volunteered for Bobby Kennedy's presidential run. I was fortunate to come into the Swing Left family a few years ago when I attended a letter writing party at Bonner's home. And it was just the right time and right place for me. I had just retired and I was looking for an outlet for my activism. And I felt that Swing Left had the right strategy and the right structure for me. So I've always fervently believed in the principles upon which our country is founded. While there is no question that we've often fallen short of meeting those ideals, I believe it's our right and our privilege and our responsibility as US citizens to help make this nation a more perfect union.
Yeah, well said, Donna. We are happy you're here. And thank you again to the three of you for all the incredible work that you've been doing. And the first question I have for the group, and maybe we'll go in the same order as the introductions, is I would love for you all to share, what is the biggest reflection that you have from your organizing work in the 2020 election?
My biggest reflection is that youth organizing is really powerful. So we all know that young people, especially young people of color, got out to vote in record numbers in key states like Georgia that helped us win the White House and flip the Senate. But youth volunteers also made a really huge difference. And so I saw how Swing Left helped empower so many college students like me with the tools and training we need to get involved in our elections and reach out to other young voters and people all over the country. So that's something that I think is really important for our victory in 2020 and going forward.
I think one of my big takeaways is that no action is too small. We had anything from phone banking to letter writing to postcarding to you name it. There was all these things going on, and we see just how much of an impact it had. And sometimes there are questions, what's most effective, what's less effective, but it just shows that when we put everything together and we come together, we can do it and we can make a difference. We had some thin minorities and some majorities in some states that we won, but I mean, who knows, maybe that one letter that went to one person made a big different impact. So I think every little bit counts and any kind of engagement counts. And I think it's great how we were able to find ways to come together even with the pandemic. Like in other years, we'd be driving out to suburbs to knock on doors, but this year we did lots of Zooming, and it was a great experience. I would look forward to our Zoom call. So it was a really great, it was nothing can keep us down when we put our mind to it.
So for me, my greatest takeaway was just how amazing our membership was. We tripled our membership last year, increasing it from about 400 members to 1,200 members. And our members were so engaged, and their dedication and enthusiasm were contagious and inspiring. It's what led us to complete almost 53,000 Big Send letters that I'm aware of. Bonner and I feel so lucky to have such a committed membership. So we're going to do what we can to expand our membership, to provide them with the tools and resources they need in 2021 and 22, so that we can continue to meet our goals, and develop other programs for our members that will keep them engaged, whether through e-blasts or fundraisers or membership meetings. So our focus is going to be on supporting our membership.
Amazing. I love all of those things. And that's a great segue to my next question. You know, as we look ahead to the fights that we have in 2021, in 2022, I'm really curious how each of you are planning to maintain and also level up your organizing work for some of these big competitive elections ahead. We'll start with you again, Madeline.
Yeah, so my group, Swing Left GW, just finished up a series we called Organizing 101. So we did some events where we trained our student volunteers on really basic skills like volunteer recruitment and telling your story of self and things like that, because we wanted to use this time to really invest in our volunteers so that by the time we get to those big elections you talked about in 2021 and 2022, we're all really ready and prepared as possible to make a huge difference. So we're really using this time to power up by training people.
I think from us on the Chicago side, I'll speak a little bit to what we're doing in Chicago, and then maybe I'll speak to what kind of I'm doing personally to level up and recharge myself. The Chicago side, you know, as Ethan was saying earlier, we are waiting a little bit to see what the redistricting looks like, what our strategies are going to look like, but we're already involved. We know there's a special election. We're working a lot with our friends just to the north of us in Wisconsin to help them maintain and really kind of take back any sort of, win any special elections and help undo any sort of unfair maps. As you know, Wisconsin is gerrymandered like from here to high hell. So working to get as many wins as we can in there, as we hope we can kind of keep Wisconsin blue. We already turned it blue. I'm so used to saying turn Wisconsin blue after 4 years. So keep Wisconsin blue and stay involved in the SEP with them. I think from a personal level, I'm looking at just kind of recharging, taking a quick break, and then also jumping back in with a different focus, moving from damage control and kind of like fighting to win the war to you know, use Ethan's war analogies, but now also trying to keep the peace and make sure that we stay and we keep this positive momentum that we've built, make it unstoppable.
Well, as I mentioned, we really value our membership, and one of the keys to keeping them engaged is to implement and expand our training programs. So one of the things we did last year was have a new member orientation, and we plan to do that again this year. We also implemented last year a letter writing party host training program that was incredibly successful, and we created, we trained dozens of capable, effective, and confident hosts. So we were able to hold as many meetings as we could. We were averaging towards the end 2 and 3 meetings a week. So that was really great. We're going to continue offering phone banking training. And then we explored some new tactics last year, and our board is thinking about that again this year. Last year, we were really so fortunate to have Valerie Mendoza join our board. Valerie has become our social media director and has significantly grown our social media footprint and following. And then the other learning we had was we realized that many of our members don't have printers, and they really wanted to write letters for Go Forward. But one of our members became our guardian angel, and she printed out hundreds of thousands of letters for us pages and pages and pages for our volunteers, and she was beyond awesome. So, so that was a realization as well. So we just are going to continue, our board is going to continue to meet and develop our strategy, and we'll go forward from there.
Thank you. And I have one final question I want to pose to the three of you before we get to the next part of our agenda. I'm curious what your advice or what you would say to someone who is, one, exhausted from all the work that they did last year and just you know, really tired from all the phone calls and letter writing, and they're trying to figure out how they level up. Or maybe someone who is actually new. We probably have some new people on this call who may have volunteered a little bit in the past, but are really looking to level up and kind of dig deeper into their organizing work. And so I'm curious what each of you would say to someone who is thinking about what their organizing role and what their work will look like this year. What's some advice that you would give them?
For people who are new, one thing I would say is that you're much more prepared to be an organizer than you might think you are. You don't have to know like every swing district in the country and all these policies. If you're just good at talking to people, if you've like gotten people to show up at a party before, you can probably get people to come phone bank with you. So even if you're new to this, you have the skills to do it. So just channel whatever issue it is you're passionate about and talk to people about that, and you can get them to volunteer with you and make it really fun and rewarding.
Yeah, I would agree with Madeline. I think some advice I would give is, one, there's space for everyone. You have any engagement helps, so you don't need to go in and jump and do 75 things at once. Like even writing a handful of letters or postcards, totally fine. You don't need to be phone banking. There's space for everyone, and everything we do has impact. So don't even worry about it. Jump in, find something that makes you feel comfortable, you feel good about it, go from there. There's room for everyone. I think that it can seem a little intimidating sometimes, like, oh my God, all these things I'm doing, how do I organize? But just like Madeline said, if you can get people to show up to a party, you can get people to come and phone bank or even text bank or whatever their level of comfort is. So it's just about finding that and helping kind of people really lean into their strengths. And I think one thing I would say is also for people who are feeling tired after 2020, I don't know anyone who's exhausted on an existential level, not speaking for myself, but I think all of us, we do deserve a little bit of a break. You know, we kind of have a forced break as the winter sets in, like Ethan said. I think we should use it to recharge, reassess, and just get ready for the fight coming, because we have plenty of work to do. But right now, let's take a breather, take a moment to appreciate our win. Savor seeing Vice President Kamala Harris break those ties, and just get up and get going again.
I love what you guys have said, and I totally agree with you. But for someone who's new and thinking about organizing, I would say we just learned a major lesson. We cannot take our democracy for granted, and we have to fight for it every single day. And it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you do something and follow your passion.
Oh, that's a great note to end on, Donna. I honestly feel like I could keep talking to the three of you for probably another hour, but to adhere to our agenda, that is unfortunately all the time that we have. Thank you so much to all three of you, not only for the incredible work that you're doing locally and in your communities, but also for the wisdom that you shared. Every single answer was so thoughtful and articulate, and I feel energized and fired up after hearing from the three of you. And so when this pandemic is over, hopefully maybe I can come visit some of your Swing Left groups and do some canvassing and some filmmaking or something with you all and meet in person. But thank you again. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the incredible work that y'all will continue to do. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Cool. Well, on that note, we'll go to the next stage of our agenda. We have another special guest joining us tonight particularly to emphasize why these off years are so important for maintaining momentum and helping us lay the groundwork for continued victories in 2021, 2022, 2024 and beyond. Ben Wickler is the chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, a state that some of you may be pretty familiar with, as it has played a tiny role in the last couple elections. I'm just kidding, it's one of the most important swing states. So without further ado, we will kick it over to Ben.
Hello, Swing Left. This is Ben Wickler, the chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. I'm so excited to join you and to connect about the critical importance of the work that we do this year in 2021. Here is why I think this year is so incredibly important. It's a tale of two other years. One of them was 2009. After we won everything in 2008, Wisconsin became a blue trifecta nationally. We had a 60-vote Senate majority, a hugely Democratic House of Representatives. The right organized, the right mobilized. And on the Democratic side, although lots of us were still involved in the fight, the sense of national urgency and emergency lessened. And the right, frankly, out-organized us. Their ability to drive forward led to the shackling, effectively, of the Obama presidency on so many critical policy issues. And we know that after they move past the current civil war on the GOP side, they're going to direct their fire back at us. They will mobilize and try to build a backlash. They did it in 1994, they did it in 2010, and all of that work begins in the off year. The other year I want to call to mind is 2017. The year Swing Left burst onto the national scene. The year that so many of us marched in the Women's March and then so many marches after that. A year of incredible urgency that then took shape and channeled into the blue wave of 2018 and our victory in 2020. So much of what happens every 2 and 4 years begins in the off year. 2021 is when we lay the groundwork, when we sustain our momentum, when we build our strength, when we apply the lessons that we've learned. And year-round organizing is how we turned Wisconsin blue in 2020, starting in 2017, our continuous field program, and it's how Georgia turned blue. It's how all of our progress is built, the patient work, even when the spotlights are not on it. So the fact that you're here shows that you understand how important this is. I'm grateful for that. And I want to ask you, no matter what else is happening in the world, hold that flame lit. Hold that flame of carrying the work forward, because it's what we do when nobody's looking that makes the biggest difference when we're on the national stage. So thank you everyone at Swing Left for powering such an incredibly important series of wins over these last few years, and thank you for being in this fight as we move forward. It's going to take long-term change to do what we need to do, and we're in this together.
Awesome. That's so great to hear from Ben, doing amazing work in Wisconsin, Ben Wickler, as well as so many of you all on this call tonight. My name is Erica Sagrins. I am on Swing Left's community team, and it's just lovely to be with you all, see the activity, the awesomeness in the chats and the energy that we know we need to keep going. And there are no off years, as Ben and I think other folks have been saying. So we got a lot of great questions ahead of this call and during the call in the chat. Remember you can keep asking questions. We know there's a lot that we haven't been able to get to because there's so many, but we're doing our best. And we're going to highlight a few questions. There were a few common ones that kept coming up, but I also want to remind folks that you can go to Twitter and tweet at Swing Left. It's just at Swing Left with any questions as a follow-up to this, in case we aren't able to get to your questions tonight. So I want to invite Ethan, Tori, and Nisha to come back on video, and we will get started with a few questions. So I want to start with one question from Susan in New York that I think we'll send to Nisha, which is, what are we doing about gerrymandering? What will be changed by the appallingly jiggered 2020 census?
Oh, thanks, Erica. That's actually a really good question, because I have it on my mind all the time. So I'm glad folks are thinking about this along with us. So as I mentioned, when I talked through our strategy, as it pertains to gerrymandering and redistricting at large, we will be supporting the work of state Democratic caucuses, the DLCC, and NDRC, National Democratic Redistricting Committee, in their efforts fighting for fair redistricting across the country. And as those partners begin to ask for action, we will then direct interested members of the swing left community to their efforts. So that's one of the things that we'll be doing as it pertains to redistricting and gerrymandering. For the second half of the question, specifically at Swing Left on the political team, we are going to be closely monitoring what happens to existing swing districts and keeping an eye on states that are going to be gaining or losing congressional districts. We'll also be monitoring states with new independent redistricting commissions, states that are controlled by a different party than in 2010, and states where population changes within the state may garner a net gain or net loss in Democratic seats. So that's some of the work we're doing around redistricting and gerrymandering. And as more information from our partners and actions are actualized, we'll make sure to share that with our Swing Left community.
Great, thank you, Nisha. All right, our next question comes from Barbara in Maryland. I'm gonna throw it over to Tori, which is, what are your action plans for addressing issues including voting rights and voter suppression, racial justice, and other systemic problems that compromise our democracy?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. And first, I just want to call that I don't think this question has ever been more important to ask than right now. Since Joe Biden's election, we've seen Republican state lawmakers advance over 100 pieces of legislation to restrict voting rights in states across the country. That is over triple the amount that we saw this time last year, and it's no coincidence. We know that this is part of the game plan that Republicans play. If they can't win the game, they try to rig the rules. And so we need to fight this at the state and local level, not just from a policy perspective, but also, what are the judicial avenues to fight back, as well as the electoral venues, which is what Swing Left does. From Swing Left's perspective, this is one of the core reasons we created Blueprint, which is an online tool we have to strategically donate resources to not only short-term electoral victories for the races that we have in November, but what are the civic organizations that are doing that long-term work on the ground to sustain, strengthen, fight back against bad policy, and overall build our democracy to be more inclusive and accessible for all. And so currently our Blueprint tool is helping raise resources for organizations in Virginia, doing a lot of this work, as well as national partners who are combating redistricting across the country and really making sure that we are in the fight for fair maps in this next round of redistricting. And you can check out more of that work at www.blueprint.swingleft.org. And lastly, I think to the second part of the question, the work to dismantle white supremacy and systematic racism in our world starts internally as much as it does externally. And this is one of the reasons that Swing Left began cultural competency trainings for our volunteer community last year, created an anti-racism hub for actions that our community could take to uplift Black and Brown leaders and organizations directly combating racist policies and leaders. And we will continue to work on the best ways to show up as a partner, as an ally to Black and Brown people and communities that are disproportionately impacted by racism, xenophobia, and the systematic oppression that is so deeply embedded in systems across our country.
Great, thanks, Tori. I'm gonna go to Ethan next with a question from Doyle in Los Angeles, which is, how can we better allocate spending and volunteering in the future to make sure the good guys and less sexy races are getting the grassroots resources that they need to win?
Hey Doyle, this is great, because this is something we think a lot about at Swing Left, because we know that it's something that you folks think a lot about. Look, we know that the reason people come to Swing Left is because they want to help take and now hold power for Democrats, so Democrats can pass the laws and make people's lives better, make our society more just. But we also know that the time and money that you all invest in trying to help win these races is really, really precious. It's not like just laying around everywhere. And so whenever we recommend volunteer and donation actions, we don't just think about the flippability of that race, but we also think about the saturation of resources in that race already. So as a couple examples here, like last cycle, some of the races might have been really close, but if they were getting a ridiculous amount of money and volunteer action, we tended to send people to different places. We try to think about zigging where other people zagged so that people can kind of get, have the greatest impact to try to get those resources to where they're really needed. Another example is thinking about, like in 2018, when we could canvass, we had a tool to help people find their last weekend canvassing shift, and we were in close contact with the campaigns and the party and the polls and everything, so we could redirect people away from the events and resources that were races that were getting sufficient resources and towards the ones that were still competitive but were not getting what we needed. One last point on this. It might surprise some people to learn that of the approximately like $26 million that we helped direct and raise for candidates and organizations last cycle, the largest tranche, about $12 million, was for state legislatures. Although we did not flip state legislatures that we were trying to flip, we feel really good about that decision because, this was in a cycle that was like, record setting in terms of its fundraising. The one thing that was not overfunded was state legislature races, because they never are. And so that was pretty clearly the place where people's money were going to be able to have the greatest impact in a cycle that, just like I said, blew through fundraising records across the board. So, great question. The answer is broadly stick with us, because this is actually the challenge that we devote a lot of our organization's resources to helping you solve.
Great, thank you, Ethan. And next I'll kick it to Tori, the question from Rachel, which is, how did Swing Left select working on Virginia this coming year?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rachel. First, Virginia is a perennial swing state. We are always fighting to gain ground in Virginia, whether at the state level or the federal level, and then keep that ground for Democrats once we have it. We know that our majorities at the federal level are not only fragile, but also our majorities at the state legislature and the state level where we have them are also fragile. Swing Left was thrilled to be part of the effort to take back the Virginia State Senate and House of Delegates in 2019, and to help elect a Democratic trifecta in state government in Virginia. And, we've seen over the last few years what a progressive Democratic state legislature and a Democratic governor in Virginia can do. Just this past week, the legislature approved abolishing the death penalty, which was a huge success. And we've seen over the last few years, this legislature prioritize criminal justice reform, women's rights, more accessible voting laws in Virginia. And so we want to protect that majority and ensure that Democrats retain the governorship as well, to really help build on some of the progress that we've seen over the last couple of years. And lastly, we know that Virginia will also be a really important national signal to what's ahead. It will be a signal and a referendum not only in Virginia, but also at the national level, and a signal of what's to come in 2022. We saw the blue wave of 2018 whenever we took back the House begin with a blue wave in Virginia in 2017. We saw the blue wave in 2020 with taking back the White House and the Senate begin with Democratic wins in Virginia in 2019. And on the flip side, the red wave that some of us remember in 2010 when Democrats lost a lot of ground in Congress and at the state legislative level, we saw that red wave begin with Republican wins in Virginia in 2009. And so we know this state is a bellwether. And, even outside of kind of the signal that work will send and kind of continuing this Democratic progress at the state legislative level, we have learned the lessons of what happens when Democrats take their eye off the ball at the state legislative level. We are still reeling from the losses that Democrats suffered in the 2010 election by losing state houses across the country, which impacted gerrymandering and our ability to fight on fair maps at the congressional level. And so not just with Virginia, but also with states across the country, Democrats have to keep our eye on the ball with these state legislatures and make sure that we are walking and chewing gum at the same time. We are not only fighting at the federal level and ensuring that we have a Democratic majority and a Democrat in the White House, but also that we are gaining ground and making progress at the state legislative level, because we know that's where so much important policy that impacts the day-to-day lives of people across this country. A lot of those policy decisions are made at the state level, and a lot of the policy decisions in terms of how our maps are drawn also happen at the state level. And so that's why Virginia is going to be a priority, and why state work will continue to be a priority for Swing Left overall.
Great, thanks, Tori. Last question, the next question is going to be the last. I know there are a ton of great questions happening in the chat right now. Just really thoughtful and important questions about kind of reflecting back on 2020. What can we jump into now? We know there's a lot to learn still and a lot to plan, but folks are really fired up, and it's amazing to see. We have nearly 2,000, I think probably over 2,000 folks on this call tonight. So I know you can't see each other's faces because it's too many, but you can see everybody super active in the chat. So it's really great to see this energy. And just a reminder, you can tweet at Swing Left if you have additional questions. And remember to go, Tori's gonna give a plug for the Power Up website. It's swingleft.org/power-up. We'll put that in the chat as well. But to kind of figure out the next steps and how to keep plugged in. But the last question I have is for Ethan from Kay in Minnesota, which is a great one. Complacency and fatigue will be the enemy of this next effort. How will you address that?
Yeah, so my new plan is to get everyone to sign into a call with a lot of our volunteers and volunteer leaders, and every week if we do that, everyone will stay fired up. I know that I am. Seriously, your energy is amazing. Your commitment is amazing. Our volunteer leaders, it was just so awesome to hear from all of you. But to be serious for a second, this is something that we've thought about and worried about actually quite a bit. And I don't mean to be complacent, but I'm actually starting to worry about it just a little bit less. Basically, we're thinking, okay, when Trump's gone, all the volunteers are going to go away. People are going to say, game over. But I don't know. The 2020 election, we won, obviously, and we won all the things, but things were tighter than we hoped, certainly tighter than the polls seemed to indicate. And while I would like a several-seat majority in the Senate and a much larger majority in the House and many more state legislatures, I think there's a silver lining to that. It's almost as though the margins in the Congress right now are underscoring everything that the House Republicans and Senate Republicans are doing in sort of refusing to hold Trump accountable, for his completely anti-democratic and authoritarian actions, which is to say, sending us the very, very clear message that democracy is so fragile and we cannot take our eye off the ball and we have to keep working at it. So, I think although these events have been horrible and the election didn't go as, wasn't as overwhelming as we wanted to do, I think the really silver lining all that is it clearly made the message to all of us that we have to stay engaged in a really big way, because we cannot take this stuff for granted. On a more practical front, I think our Power Up strategy is really about trying to help people sort of maintain their work and do what's most effective for them to do in this sort of lull period, but also to give people the space and understanding that it's okay to take a rest, it's okay to recharge, to address that fatigue. We can't be in this 24/7 all the time. We do have to take some time for ourselves. So, we're trying to give you the framework and the understanding of what you can do now, but encourage you to recharge as well, because there's so many more important fights ahead. 2022 is, tilted against us, and then 2024 will be another presidential year. So we're in this for the long haul. It looks like you guys are too. And so, we just have to keep kind of supporting each other and keep energizing each other, in calls and venues like this. And I thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart for, for continue to energize me and keep me inspired in this work, because it's amazing. We really appreciate it. We're so inspired to be in this fight with all of you.
Awesome, thanks, Ethan. Kathleen just asked in the chat, when's the next meeting? I don't know when the next call like this is. We will have more, but I'll give it over to Tori to close us out, and also just remind you of next steps. And folks are putting in the chat the link that you can go to sign up for a few different things to get plugged in right away. So Tori, close us out.
Thank you, Erica. I know we weren't able to get to everyone's questions tonight, but this is going to be the first of many conversations we will have this year and next as we move forward in this work together. There's going to be a lot of information to come over the next few months, but just remember a few quick ways you can get involved right now. Joining a Swing Left group, helping raise money for eventual Democratic opponents of very bad Republicans, and signing up on our website to be the first to know about the races we're going to be focused on in 2021, 2022, and the most strategic ways that you can get involved in the elections that matter most. And so as we close out our call tonight, I just want to reiterate a thank you to all of you for joining us tonight, continuing to keep up the fight to make our country a better place. What lies ahead for this entire community is really similar to Swing Left's roots. Like Ethan said, we started this organization and this movement by taking back the House in 2018, and we are so incredibly excited and grateful for all the progress that we've made, and we are ready to protect that progress that we all fought so hard for, and to make sure it's defended in these majorities in Congress. So, in closing, we won in 2020 because we stuck together. We focused, we didn't let up, we fought for that progress. And if we maintain focus and continue to fire up our community and those around us, we're going to be able to sustain it moving forward. And so thank you again for joining us. Please remember to take care of yourself over the next few weeks. Take some time to reflect and take a break and rest, and then start planning and start powering up for the fight ahead. Swing Left is going to be a partner with you in this fight. And we're so excited to start this next chapter with you. So I could not be grateful to be in this fight with each and every one of you, and really look forward to the next time that we get to talk. Thanks, everyone.